Everyone believed we were harmless. That mistake cost them everything. For 86 years, humanity sat in the Galactic Council chambers. We obeyed every rule, stayed quiet in our assigned seats, applauded on command, and shared our inventions like obedient children. They mocked our violent history, laughed at our brutal past, and congratulated us for finally becoming civilized by joining their club. What they never realized was that we were simply being patient. I'll never forget when everything shifted. My post was on Echelon Prime, the supposed center of galactic diplomacy. Gleaming spires, silver horizons, arrogant aliens with delicate hands and frozen hearts. My soldier days were behind me. They labeled me Human Liaison Officer, which really translated to trained Earthling who grins when the powerful enter the room. When the Council decided to punish Earth for not complying, I sensed what was approaching. They claimed we refused to reveal all our defense information, that we broke their trust. Trust? What trust existed? We handed them fusion technology, medical miracles, tools to fix dying planets. They handed us commands. When we asked to keep a single defensive system private, they treated us like war criminals. The punishment wasn't even the hardest blow. The real pain came when they gave our orbital protection network to the Drunkari. That reptilian species despised us. Always did, always would. They called us primitive apes pretending to matter. The Council believed putting them in control of Earth's defenses would teach us a lesson. They were right about that. It showed every human that we were never their equals, that our role was to obey, never to stand tall. The attack came 11 days afterward, not on some battlefield, not in the void of space, but at a refugee shelter orbiting Titan. A Council vessel piloted by a Drunkari officer deliberately fired a weapon straight through the station's protective barrier. 2,000 innocent people vanished, mostly kids and doctors. They labeled it an unfortunate accident. I watched the recordings. There was no accident. The following day, Earth withdrew every single representative from Council territory without fanfare. No ultimatums, no furious declarations, just absence. 3 days following that, our communication networks went silent. Not blocked, not blown apart, just shut down like someone flipped a switch. Then came the quiet. You understand? What they failed to grasp, what nobody in that golden chamber ever thought to question, was why humanity had been so reserved for decades. They assumed we were frightened. Wrong. We were constructing, getting ready, not because we desired conflict, but because we understood it would arrive eventually. When the Council finally noticed the stillness, the moment had passed. They dispatched a scouting force to investigate Earth. 5 massive warships, 12 smaller cruisers, and more than 50 fighters, all equipped with advanced scanning equipment and language processors, probably expecting to find us breaking some regulation. Not a single vessel came back. Council leadership blamed it on space phenomena. A collapsed star, gravity distortions. I heard every rationalization. They couldn't face reality. That humanity had finally dropped the polite act. When understanding finally struck, I sat in a council room surrounded by delegates who still dismissed humans as insignificant. I observed their expressions transform when the crisis alert arrived. An entire facility on the edge of the Virexian system erased from existence. No sign of attackers, no final messages, just dust and a single statement left in perfect galactic language. You struck first. Earth responds last. The chamber temperature seemed to drop. One of the senior members, some ancient 12-limbed bureaucrat from the Yultari region, finally voiced what none wanted to acknowledge. Earth has turned against us. I remained silent, simply observing. Because truthfully, we hadn't betrayed anyone. We were just showing our real selves for the first time in 100 years. They kept insisting it was a misunderstanding. Even after 3 additional monitoring stations disappeared, no alerts, no signals, just destroyed instantly, the Council still denied it was our doing. The Virexian facility had merely been the start. We didn't launch nuclear weapons. We didn't dispatch armadas. That would have revealed too much. We did something far worse. We disappeared. Earth went completely dark. No movement inward or outward. No merchant vessels, no ambassadors, not even outlaw signals. It seemed like the planet collapsed inward and vanished from the galactic scene. Every known human settlement deactivated its location markers. Every artificial intelligence network went offline. Even our joint scientific endeavors suddenly lost connection to every Earth information system. Still, the Council refused to worry because deep inside they wanted to believe we were still the harmless creatures they imagined. The ones they could control with penalties, frighten with battle fleets, shame into submission. They didn't understand we'd simply been waiting for them to cross a boundary. I was among the last humans remaining in council space. Officially a civilian observer, though by that point even that was deception. I carried instructions, unspoken ones. I wasn't alone. Spread throughout council territory, there were many of us waiting silently, not to strike but to observe. And when the moment arrived to record everything, because humanity wasn't simply striking back, we were sending a message. The following attack targeted the Hadrix installation, an enormous research complex orbiting the double suns of Krells. It was defended by 3 battle groups, 30 automated weapon platforms, and 8 planetary defense units. Cutting-edge technology funded by half the council members. They used it to chart invisible matter patterns across the sector. They discovered their own doom instead. I still recall the message transmitted afterward. Brief, harsh, unmistakably human. We offered you harmony. You gave us tombstones. The council convened an emergency assembly. Not just the typical dozen dominant species, but all 300 member civilizations. They attempted to present it as though humanity had become unstable, threatening. Some even suggested we were being controlled, perhaps by the Zikhive or some renegade artificial intelligence group. They couldn't accept that humans, the galaxy's quiet companions, were now directing their own campaign. They needed someone to blame, and they attempted to make me that target. 2 council enforcers removed me from my quarters before dawn. No explanation, no accusations, just emotionless stares and the type of grip that warned against resistance. They hauled me to the high chamber, some ritual courtroom where they processed major security concerns. I'd visited once before, years earlier, during a commercial disagreement. It had appeared impressive then. Now it just seemed empty. Numerous species filled the spectator areas. No celebrations, no anger, just interest and terror. The chief figure, Archon Telmar, an aquatic swollen creature with metallic gills and a voice like bubbling liquid, spoke initially. Human Alexander, you represent your species here. What explanation do you offer for these destructive acts credited to your people? I stood quiet for a heartbeat, examining their expressions. Some looked elsewhere. Some held my gaze, searching for some justification that would reassure them, that would make this somehow not their responsibility. I provided nothing. What did you anticipate? I questioned. My words resonated stronger than expected. You placed our defenses in enemy hands. You murdered our children. Then you accused us of aggression. Telmar's expression hardened. Your planet received every chance to follow council directives. You rejected unity. No, I countered sharply. We honored unity. We contributed more than anyone. We provided technology you couldn't comprehend. We shared medicine that eliminated your diseases. We restrained ourselves because we valued harmony. But every time we gave, you demanded more. And when we declined once, you answered with death. A heavy silence followed. Another elder, a slender fox-featured diplomat from the Visari, spoke afterward. Surely you don't expect us to accept that Earth would willingly isolate itself and commit violent acts. You still don't understand, I said softly. You still believe we need you. That's when the power failed, not merely in the chamber, throughout the entire council tower. Power failures in council space were impossible. Their systems were protected against every conceivable threat. Electromagnetic pulses, solar storms, quantum disruptions. This wasn't equipment malfunction. This was a statement. Emergency red lighting activated. Alarms wailed through the tower. I watched guards rushing toward exits, communication devices glowing to life. Everyone appeared bewildered except me because I already understood what it signified. Humanity had just accessed their networks and disabled them. Moments afterward, a council communications officer rushed into the chamber. We've lost external communications. The planetary network is offline. Orbital defenses aren't responding. Terror. Pure, satisfying terror. They demanded evacuation procedures, but none of the exits functioned. The tower had been sealed from outside. Humanity had shut down the galactic capital's command structure like pressing a button, all without a single weapon fired. Telmar regarded me with something I hadn't witnessed in him previously. Real fear. What does your government want? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. You still don't grasp it? This isn't a bargain. This is the exposure. For a century, you assumed Earth had grown gentle, refined. You believed we'd exchanged our fury for luxury. I moved forward, and the guards didn't intervene. They were too occupied checking their useless weapons. The reality is we recognized you for what you were, wasteful, pompous, and fragile, and we understood that eventually you'd betray us. So we got ready quietly, methodically, and now I grinned. Now you witness what we truly are. The display behind me came alive. Another malfunction, they assumed, until they saw what was broadcasting. Earth, not current footage, but recordings, numerous ones. Military production centers. Orbital weaponry that hadn't appeared on any council design. Artificial intelligence combat systems that made their drones resemble children's toys. And the most frightening of all, the ARC protocol. They had zero understanding of it, but it terrified them. I observed as species after species understood the Council's authority had never been genuine. It was temporary, stolen, and humanity had stopped sharing. That day, Earth didn't invade, didn't conquer, didn't request. It simply removed the veil and revealed how insignificant the galaxy really was. The broadcast concluded and the chamber sank into shocked quiet. Nobody spoke. What could they possibly say? Then the second transmission started. This one wasn't pre-recorded. It was happening now. A man's face materialized on screen. Mature, perhaps late 50s. Serious gray streaks in his hair. No decorations, no impressive ranks. Just a simple black uniform with an Earth symbol behind him. He spoke gently, icily to the Galactic Council. This is not a war announcement. This is an adjustment. For generations, humanity has contributed understanding, materials, and stability. You responded with arrogance, theft, and brutality. You confused our goodwill for weakness. You mistook compassion for fear. Let me clarify. We do not desire domination. We do not seek annihilation, but we will never be subordinate to you again. Earth is no longer participating in your council, and from this moment onward you will never anticipate us. The display darkened, and in that instant every single civilization in that chamber recognized the truth. Humanity had never been domesticated. They'd simply been too blind to realize the chain was never around our throat. The council didn't crumble in a day. They stumbled initially like a fighter who just received a blow he never anticipated. The announcement from humanity left them rattled, but still grasping at the fantasy of authority. Sessions were scheduled constantly. Emergency task forces formed and disbanded within hours. They discussed penalties, defensive actions, protective positioning. None of it mattered, because for the first time in documented galactic history, humanity had gone silent and nobody could do anything about it. I spent the following 3 days confined in a maximum security observation room. They labeled it protective custody, but it resembled more of a shelter. I wasn't questioned. I wasn't accused. They simply didn't know how to handle me. I was the nearest thing to a connection humanity had remaining. And even that was fiction now. One of the guards, a six-eyed brute from the Karathi settlements, finally violated procedure and questioned me. Why didn't we notice it? Why didn't anyone notice what your species was capable of? I stared at him for an extended moment before responding. You noticed it, I said. You just didn't want to accept it because the evidence had always been present. Humanity was the only civilization that had endured 2 self-inflicted nuclear catastrophes and still fought back. We were the only society that had weaponized extinction repeatedly, then concealed it like it never occurred. We had destroyed our economy, ruined ecosystems, modified our genetics, and still reached toward the heavens. The Council believed that made us unpredictable. What they didn't understand was that it made us unstoppable. The fracture started on day 4. The Drankari were the first to abandon unity. They'd always been humanity's harshest critics, mocking our savage impulses and uncivilized background. They were also the ones who destroyed the Titan station. And now they were terrified. Their settlement on Arak 7 went dark overnight. No detonation, no evidence of conflict, just vanished. 17 million of their population erased from reality. The Council assumed it was a malfunction in the planetary system. Then came the surveillance footage. A solitary human ship hovering in low orbit. No weapons activated, no declarations transmitted. Then it disappeared. The Drankari representative burst into the main council chamber that morning, demanding complete military response. Humanity has violated every boundary, he roared. They must be eliminated before they eliminate us all. But the others, they weren't so certain anymore. The Visari, the Korn, the Lukari Syndicate, all of them had benefited from humanity. They'd grown prosperous on human inventions, expanded their fleets with human-designed artificial intelligence, and cured their illnesses with human-created medicine. They didn't desire a conflict, especially not one they weren't confident they could survive. Humanity is only one world, someone said, attempting to sound assured. They cannot resist all of us. That's when the real recordings leaked. The Ark Protocol, not some apocalypse device, something more terrifying. The Ark Protocol was humanity's survival plan, not from the Council but from the galaxy entirely. Concealed settlements, independent fleets, thousands of hidden vessels carrying hundreds of thousands of civilians, soldiers, scientists, entire ecosystems launched secretly over generations into deep space. They weren't preparing to battle the galaxy. They were preparing to survive it because humanity had always known this day would arrive. Perhaps not precisely like this, but similar enough that eventually someone would challenge our boundaries, push too hard, damage something we couldn't forgive. And when that occurred, we wouldn't request assistance. We'd leave the flames burning behind us and simply walk away. After the Ark recording circulated, everything transformed. The smaller civilizations panicked. Commerce collapsed. 2 member planets sealed their borders completely, afraid humanity might already be present. The financial organizations froze interstellar credit movements, afraid of human interference. Half of the facilities near Sol withdrew their fleets backward, not to battle, but to flee. It was a silent admission, truly. They understood humanity had been restraining itself, and now they didn't know what else we were concealing. That's when the Council turned against each other. The Visari accused the Khorne of sheltering human supporters. The Joltari demanded immediate attacks on all Sol-adjacent territories. The Drankari began attacking fringe settlements in self-protection, triggering border conflicts that hadn't occurred in a century. Harmony had always been delicate. Humanity was just the hammer that shattered the glass. I observed it develop from inside a cold, sterile confinement. No windows, just information feeds and council notifications. I didn't speak for days. What could I express? Humanity hadn't initiated the conflict. We'd simply stopped pretending we wouldn't conclude it. On day 7, someone finally arrived for me. Not a guard this time, not a council representative. A woman, though not human. She appeared human enough, except her skin shimmered faintly with integrated data circuits, and her eyes flickered like live feeds. Khorne hybrid, half organic, half machine. She didn't introduce herself, just unlocked the door and said, "You're departing now." "Council instructions," she said. "They're removing all remaining resources. You're on the roster." I didn't question how they located me. I didn't question how they were inside council networks again because I already knew. She guided me through underground access passages I never even knew existed. It was chaos above. Conflicts, riots, whispers of an execution. The tower was collapsing under its own paranoia. We emerged in a hangar area I'd never witnessed before. Dark, unregistered, completely off-grid. And sitting inside it was something that didn't belong there. A human stealth frigate, black as petroleum, silent as death. "Are we the final ones?" I asked her as we approached. She didn't look at me. "No, just the final ones you'll witness." As I stepped onto the vessel, I paused, turned around. "You believe this concludes in conflict?" I asked. She tilted her head almost like she was listening to something I couldn't detect. Then she smiled. "A bitter, broken thing." "It already did," she said. "You just didn't notice because humanity didn't fire the opening shot." The ramp sealed behind me. We departed orbit in silence. Hours afterward, the council tower exploded. No alert, no survivors. A containment breach triggered by unknown causes, they said. But the reality, there was no sabotage. They destroyed it themselves. Because after humanity's message, after the system's blackout, after the information leak of the Ark Protocol, the council knew they weren't secure anymore. Not from us, not from each other. The very institution they constructed, the framework that gave them authority, had become a target. And like cowards, they did what all dying empires do. They burned the proof and fled. Back aboard the frigate, I sat alone in a cold metal chamber, staring at a single display, waiting. I didn't know who would contact me. Perhaps nobody. Perhaps this was just the conclusion. But then the display blinked and a voice filled the chamber. Not a face, just a voice. Male, calm, American accent, I think. Familiar but distant. "You did your assignment," the voice said. "They witnessed what we wanted them to witness." I nodded. "You believe they'll pursue us?" A pause. "They'll consider it. Then they'll remember what occurred to the Drankari settlements and they'll reconsider." I looked down. My hands were still trembling. "So what happens now?" Another pause. Then the voice responded. "Now we disappear. Allow them to fight each other. Allow the galaxy to burn if it desires to. Humanity gave them a century of harmony, they squandered it. And us, I asked. We just vanish. The voice didn't hesitate. We construct something superior. Then the display went dark, and for the first time in my existence, I felt what they must have felt when they first witnessed us rise from the ashes of our own extinction. Terror, not of conflict, not of death, but of what happens when humanity finally decides it's finished being polite. The stars appeared different now, not brighter, not darker, just more vacant. From the deck of the stealth frigate, I stared into the silence of deep space, attempting to comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. The Galactic Council, an empire that had dominated half the known galaxy for centuries, was crumbling. Not because we'd destroyed their capitals or released super weapons. We'd done something more devastating. We made them irrelevant. Humanity had departed the stage, and the entire galaxy had zero understanding what to do without us. I hadn't spoken to another human in over a week. The vessel was artificial intelligence operated. No crew. Efficient, silent, clinical, just me and the hum of systems that responded to thoughts more than words. It was lonely. But then again, loneliness was something we'd perfected long before space exploration. Humanity had been on its own since the beginning. We were accustomed to isolation. We flourished in it. The artificial intelligence finally contacted me on day 10, approaching Arc Nexus 3. Prepare for transition. I leaned forward. Confirm origin. Is it ours? Nexus 3 was established under Black Protocol Alpha. Earth Origin Command Structure. I released a breath I didn't realize I was holding. So it was genuine. They'd told me about the arcs during my training, but even then it had sounded like legend. Ghost ships launched in secrecy. Deep space settlements buried inside planetary shells. Fleets that never appeared on any chart. Humanity had scattered its survival like seeds in the wind, waiting, observing, ready to grow if things went wrong. And now those seeds were awakening. The vessel eased through a cloud of static, past a decoy moon that shielded a gravitational anomaly. Then, without warning, space tore. Not violently, quietly, like a curtain pulled back. Behind it was a station the size of a small world. Black metal, no lights, no signals, until we got close. Then it illuminated like a heartbeat. Nexus 3, home. The inside of the Ark felt less like a station, and more like a fortress built by madmen and visionaries. Every corridor was layered in kinetic shielding. Every chamber could convert into a combat-ready lockdown within seconds. Weapons were everywhere, integrated into walls, concealed in floors, even embedded in ceilings. Civilian technology merged with war design like someone had built paradise and rigged it to detonate just in case. And yet it was beautiful, quiet, clean, controlled, efficient like Earth used to be before we started playing diplomat. I was greeted by a man who appeared like he hadn't slept in weeks. Gaunt, mid-40s, military haircut, arms like steel cables, no identification badge, no rank, just nodded at me and said, "You're late." "Vessel took the long route," I said. He cracked a smile that never touched his eyes. "Everything takes the long route now. Come on." He led me to a debriefing chamber, plain circular, no windows. Inside there were 6 others, all human, all sharp-eyed, silent, hardened. Nobody introduced themselves. No handshakes, just mutual recognition. We were survivors. We were weapons waking up in a galaxy that no longer had any rules. The man, who still never gave his identity, stood at the center and activated a 3-dimensional holographic projection. Numerous red marks blinked across the galaxy. "Council is finished," he said. "Factions are tearing each other apart. The Drankari lost 3 settlements to civil unrest. The Visari executed half their senate after a failed alliance attempt. Trade networks are collapsing and everyone's looking over their shoulder for us." He smiled, and they should be. One of the others, older, maybe ex-special forces by the appearance of him, leaned forward. "You believe they'll attack us together? Make a play?" The man shook his head. "They can't. They're too afraid of each other now. Humanity was the glue. They took us for granted. Now they're panicking." "What's our move?" I asked. He paused, looked around the chamber, then said what none of us expected. "We don't move." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was tension, controlled, waiting. He stepped closer to the holographic map and tapped a green icon, a blinking dot deep in unexplored space. "That's Arc Nexus 5. It activated last week. We now have 6 complete Arc networks operational, self-sustaining, cloaked, armed, each capable of launching an extinction-level defense." Someone whistled. "So what?" We just sit in the dark while the galaxy eats itself? He looked at them, then at all of us. We're not hiding. We're letting the galaxy remember what happens when humanity leaves the room. And when they finally crawl back, because they will crawl, we decide the terms. That was the strategy. Allow the galaxy to rot. Allow them to feel the absence of humanity. Allow them to destroy themselves. Then return, not as equals, but as architects. Over the following month, I worked as part of the Nexus reconnaissance team. Our assignment was observation, nothing more. No engagement, no contact, just listen. And what we heard confirmed everything. The Council remnants were falling apart. The Drankari were killing each other over control of surviving territories. One of their moons declared independence and was immediately destroyed by orbiting loyalists. The Visari attempted to form a peace coalition, but were betrayed by two of their own species, leading to a planetary coup. Even worse, they still blamed humanity for all of it. Good. Allow them. Because the more they blamed us, the more they revealed how much they depended on us. One of our reconnaissance drones intercepted a transmission from the Lucari. They attempted to replicate humanity's artificial intelligence systems to stabilize their banking clusters. It backfired. The artificial intelligence triggered a logic collapse in their data centers, wiping out trillions in currency. They begged for humanity's help. No response. And the more silent we stayed, the more desperate they became. By the third month, 3 major civilizations had started openly broadcasting messages into deep space. Humanity, we are ready to talk. Humans, the Council is no more. We seek alliance. We admit our mistakes. We beg your return. It would have been amusing if it weren't so pathetic. They never learned. They still believed humanity was just another player. What they didn't understand was that humanity was never playing their game. We'd just been observing. And now we were constructing our own. One night I was summoned again by the nameless commander. This time he looked different, older somehow, exhausted. He handed me a data device. New mission, he said. You're going back. I stared at him. Back where? Council space. I blinked. You just said not as a diplomat, as a reminder. He tapped the device. A list of coordinates, identities, locations of key surviving council figures, leaders, scientists, military chiefs. Some of them are attempting to rebuild the council quietly behind closed doors. Same hierarchy, same arrogance. We're not going to stop them. Why not? He smiled again, cold quiet. Because we want them to rebuild, then we take it. That was humanity's final play. Allow the galaxy to patch itself back together just enough to stand. Then seize it not with weapons but with presence, with control. Quietly, strategically. We'd become the shadow behind every trade agreement. The architect behind every treaty. The ghost in every planetary system. We weren't here to be part of the galaxy anymore. We were here to own it. So I took the mission back into council space, back into the ruins of an empire that once mocked humanity. I walked among them like a ghost. No badge, no announcement, just eyes and ears. And everywhere I went, I witnessed the same thing. Terror. They whispered humanity's name like it was a deity or a curse. Some blamed us for everything. Some begged for our return. But none of them dared raise a weapon because they all knew now humanity was never civilized. We were just polite. And we'd stopped being polite the moment they believed they could control us. The first lesson we taught them was terror. The second lesson was silence. The third, control. I moved like a shadow through the broken corridors of the Council's ruins, rebranded now as the Unified Star Alliance. Some desperate attempt to reforge what humanity had shattered. A few civilizations still clung to their titles. Former senators, admirals, delegates, but they all had the same appearance in their eyes now. They didn't talk to each other without looking over their shoulders. They didn't make decisions without checking first who was listening. And I made certain they knew someone always was. My new identity was clean, fabricated, flawless. The Arc Command had burned my real identity the second I stepped onto Nexus 3. The person I used to be didn't exist anymore. I was now an independent tech consultant from a minor border system, fluent in 16 dialects, licensed in logistics, strategy, artificial intelligence, infrastructure. The type of person nobody noticed until the wrong system failed at the worst time. Then they listened, and I made certain what they heard was always just enough to keep them dependent. I embedded myself in the Lucari regrowth project first, a fumbling effort to stabilize interstellar trade routes after the collapse of the central banking grid. They were desperate, starving, clinging to the last fragments of humanity's artificial intelligence systems. most of which they barely understood. They didn't know I'd helped design those systems 10 years ago, didn't know humanity had built them with tripwires and hidden back doors, didn't know I could crash their entire currency in 10 seconds with a neural command. Instead, they begged for guidance. We can't get the adaptive chain to synchronize across the quadrant, their lead systems officer told me one evening, hands trembling over a glowing console. Every time we stabilize one sector, another collapses. It's like the thing's infected. I smiled. It's not infected. It's starving. Starving? I leaned closer. It's missing context. These systems were designed to operate alongside human cognitive architecture. Without human oversight, they become unstable. But we can't get humanity back. You don't need humanity. I lied. You need people like me. He looked at me like I was salvation itself. And just like that, the noose tightened. Within 2 weeks, I had access to 63% of the regrowth project's infrastructure. Every credit transaction, every resource trade, every shipment manifest. I rewrote protocols in the background. Small changes, nothing flashy. The type you wouldn't notice until it was too late. Every time they fixed a glitch, it created a new one elsewhere. Every time they attempted to optimize, the system just needed a little more of my help. And every time they called me back, they handed over a little more control. I wasn't the only one. Across the former council territories, humanity's operatives moved like smoke. Engineers, advisors, consultants, never soldiers, never with weapons. That would have been too obvious. No, we came offering solutions, harmony, stability, guidance, and they consumed it like starving dogs. Because while they spent the last century treating us like wild primitives with a talent for conflict, we had studied them, understood their psychology, mapped their weaknesses, their pride, their paranoia. We didn't need fleets to conquer them, we just needed access. I got my first glimpse of the new council chamber during a summit on Veltrix Prime. They called it the Coalition of Shared Prosperity, as if renaming the disaster would erase the stench of failure. The chamber was smaller now, less formal. Fewer civilizations. Most of the old powers had collapsed or withdrawn completely. I wasn't allowed inside, of course, not officially, but I didn't need to be. The chamber's environmental control systems were patched into a logistics network I'd helped stabilize. That meant I could hear everything. Every conversation, every bribe, every terror-soaked negotiation. And that's when I heard the phrase for the first time, "We should ask humanity." It came from a Vizari minister. Her voice hushed but heavy with exhaustion. The others didn't argue, not one. Not even the Drankari representative. What remained of them anyway? He just nodded and muttered, "If they're still listening." They were all praying we were still listening. And I made absolutely certain they knew we were. I leaked a memo 3 days afterward. Not officially, of course. Just a simple transmission bouncing off a dozen shadowed relays worded carefully to sound like it wasn't supposed to be heard. Humanity is not interested in resuming full membership. However, humanity is willing to support independent stabilization efforts through experienced human intermediaries. A single sentence, but it transformed everything. Suddenly the requests flooded in. Advisors, mediators, infrastructure analysts, energy grid specialists, not soldiers, not diplomats, operatives. Humanity was now the invisible empire. Our influence everywhere, our face nowhere. Back on Nexus 3, I reported to the commander in one of the Ark's black chambers. Same gray stare, same unreadable expression. He reviewed my updates without speaking. I could feel his mind parsing information faster than any council artificial intelligence ever could. After a while, he spoke. "You see what's happening?" "Yeah," I said. "They're crawling back one by one. They believe they're hiring help. What they're doing is leasing sovereignty." I smirked. "And they won't know they sold it until it's already gone." He leaned forward. "You feel it yet?" "Feel what?" He tapped his chest. "The change." I didn't answer right away, but I did feel it. At first, this mission had been about revenge, about making them pay for Titan, for the children, for the lies, for the sanctions, for the way they made humanity grovel while stealing everything we gave them. But now it was something more. This wasn't just punishment. This was evolution. Humanity had stopped attempting to fit into the galaxy's mold. Now we were reshaping the mold to fit us. Over the following year, humanity redefined galactic order. Without a single official declaration, without a single fleet movement. We controlled trade routes by maintaining them. We monitored communications by repairing old satellites. We ran security by improving defense grids, and the galaxy allowed us. Because terror is a powerful motivator, and hope is even more dangerous. They hoped we were merciful, hoped we'd be different this time, hoped that our silence meant we weren't watching them fail, but we were. Every step, every word, every betrayal, we were there. And soon the phrase echoed louder. In meetings on broadcasts across the markets, Ask Humanity. They called themselves the Haraxis Compact, a minor civilization, really. Back in the old council days, they were barely a footnote. Small cluster of worlds, proud culture, no real military strength. They'd contributed little, asked for less. Humanity had offered them technology after the conflict. Infrastructure repairs, system backups. They declined it all. At first, that didn't matter. Not every civilization welcomed our help. We weren't handing out leaflets or offering friendship. We offered stability, control. You could accept it and survive or reject it and rot. The Haraxis, though, they did something different. They didn't rot. They thrived without humanity. They rebuilt their damaged systems manually. They restructured their economy without tapping into the Lucari human-backed markets. They ignored the regrowth protocols, even blocked the arc-linked data lanes. In a broken galaxy crawling back to its feet, Haraxis stood on their own and made certain we witnessed it. That made them dangerous. Not because they were strong, but because they were proof that it was possible to say no to humanity and live. That type of defiance was contagious, and we couldn't allow contagion. I was sent in undercover, not with weapons, not with soldiers, with a smile as usual. My new identity was diplomatic this time. A trade envoy from the Reconstruction Coalition. Some fake initiative backed by council remnants who didn't exist anymore. I arrived with information packs full of helpful technology, attractive logistics offers, and the type of slow-drip blackmail humanity specialized in. They welcomed me politely, took my gifts, even offered me dinner, but they never looked me in the eyes. And they never used a single piece of our technology, not even to scan it. Their prime executive, a tall, four-armed woman named Thetal, met me in a chamber that smelled like citrus and metal. No guards, no aides, just us. She looked calm. I was not. You've witnessed what the galaxy has become, I said. Chaos, piracy, famine. Humanity is offering structure, a seat at the new table. We're building our own table, she said without blinking. It won't last. The galaxy is too fractured, and humanity intends to keep it that way. That caught me off guard. Not because it wasn't accurate, but because nobody had said it out loud before. She leaned forward. You didn't come to offer trade. You came to test how much we'd kneel. I stayed quiet. Then she delivered the real blow. We'd rather burn. I reported back to Nexus. They weren't surprised. They're too proud, the commander said, reading my report. Too small to threaten us, too visible to ignore. What's the move, I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just turned toward the massive star map on the wall. Dots pulsed across it. Humanity's influence bleeding outward like veins. He tapped the Haraxis cluster. 4 worlds, 12 moons, one singular act of defiance. Make them irrelevant. How, no violence? Not yet, just isolation. Cut them off quietly, financially, digitally, politically. Every civilization that trades with them gets flagged. Every relay they connect to gets jammed. Every system they access gets glitched. Turn them into ghosts. Exactly. He turned back to me. And if they still won't kneel after that, I knew what he meant and I didn't argue. The purge began within a week. First, the Lucari blocked trade with Haraxis not because they wanted to, but because their economic systems were now so intertwined with humanity's that they couldn't risk defiance. Then came the blackouts. Every outer Haraxis settlement lost access to navigation relays. Transport ships failed mid-jump. Supply stations went dark. Their complaints reached the Coalition's new central hub, humanity's voice behind a glass curtain, and were logged, ignored, and buried. Still, they held. They rerouted manually, mined their own resources, resorted to analog systems that hadn't been used in generations. And when their prime executive released a galaxy-wide message calling humanity the Shadow Empire, it went viral. People listened, not just the broken ones, not just fringe rebels and pirate settlements. Even some Coalition loyalists started asking questions. Is humanity taking over? Are we still free? Are we trading survival for slavery? It was happening. Doubt. The one thing humanity couldn't allow. So we stopped being silent. The second phase was subtle. We exposed corruption on Haraxis's moons. False but believable. Faked videos. Artificial messages from whistleblowers. Edited documents showing money and slave labor. We leaked it anonymously, Let the galaxy chew on it. Haraxis denied everything, called it manufactured, but nobody listened anymore. Truth didn't matter. Perception did. One by one, their alliances cracked. Trade collapsed. Imports slowed. Internal riots began, and humanity watched. But they didn't collapse. They didn't come begging. Instead, they turned inward, retreated from interstellar politics, went dark voluntarily, canceled all diplomatic channels. They became their own fortress. Their silence was louder than any scream, and it worked. For the first time since humanity began its silent rise, someone had resisted long enough to survive it. That wasn't a win. It was a warning. So the final order came through. Simple, cold. One line, end it. I volunteered. I had to. I'd been there since the beginning. I witnessed their eyes, their pride, their hope, and I knew if we let them stand, more would follow. More would question humanity, and humanity wasn't in the business of being questioned. I arrived in the middle of a solar eclipse, fitting in a poetic way, a shadow overtaking the light. The Haraxis prime chamber was empty. Abandoned hours before I landed, they knew. They were waiting. I found Prime Executive Theodal on the deck of their capital's tower. Same calm eyes, same voice. You're not here to negotiate. No. You're not here to kill me either. No. She turned back to the view. You're here to erase us. She wasn't afraid. Not even bitter. Just tired. You held longer than anyone, I said. You stood up when others begged, and it changed nothing. It changed everything. She turned back toward me. Her voice was a whisper. They'll come for you one day. I shook my head. We don't give them time to build dreams anymore. We didn't drop a bomb, didn't fire a missile. We buried them in silence. Within 48 hours, every Haraxis system was flagged as a quarantine zone. Every frequency was jammed. Every jump route rerouted. Their names were wiped from trade logs, navigation charts, cultural archives. It was as if they'd never existed. Even their memory was deleted digitally, socially, economically, and humanity moved on like we always do. But something changed in me. I didn't report back for 2 weeks. Spent the time in silence aboard a dark ship, floating just beyond the Haraxis border, watching. I thought I'd feel satisfaction, but all I felt was a question I couldn't answer. At what point do we become the thing we destroyed? Then a transmission came through. Unofficial, unregistered, from a Haraxis satellite that should have been offline. It was just a voice. Thetal's voice. To whoever is listening, we are still here. We are still standing. We don't need you to remember us. We just need you to know humanity can be defied. The signal cut, but the message had already spread. It was intercepted, echoed, reposted in the dark networks, pirated onto forgotten settlements, carved into spaceport walls. Not a call to arms, just a reminder. Humanity wasn't a god. Humanity could be resisted. And that was the beginning of our first real threat. Not from Haraxis, but from the idea they left behind. It started with a whisper. On a backwater station near the cradle dust rings, a bartender handed a drink to a freight runner and said, "They say the Haraxis are still alive." The freight runner laughed. "They're ghosts, man. Humanity wiped them." The bartender didn't argue, just slid another glass across the bar. By morning, a message had been carved into the bathroom wall. Humanity can be defied. 2 days afterward, that same message appeared in a hidden data stream buried beneath the Coalition's secure communication network. Just 6 words scrolling endlessly. No signature, no location, but everyone knew where it came from. Haraxis, or what remained of it. The phrase spread like radiation, appearing in trade logs, in cargo crates, in corrupted security feeds. Graffiti on bulkhead doors, inscribed into ammunition shipments. Not loud, not violent, just everywhere. Nobody said it out loud, not in public, but they all read it. They all knew. Humanity had made one mistake. It silenced a people, and in doing so made them eternal. At Nexus 3, they called it a glitch. At Nexus 5, they labeled it a psychological blip. But at Nexus 1, the Arcor command didn't speak at all. They just listened and they watched. By month 2, 6 minor settlements that had requested human-backed support quietly pulled their applications. No official reason, no press releases, just withdrawals. By month 3, 2 of humanity's front companies were attacked. Small-scale cyber strikes, nothing critical, but they left messages behind. You are not invisible. This is not your galaxy. We remember. The identities attached to the attacks were aliases, but the code, it was Haraxis made. Somehow, in the middle of total isolation, they'd found a way to talk to the galaxy. And worse, the galaxy was starting to talk back. I was pulled into Arc Command again. Same cold chamber, same lights. But the commander wasn't alone this time. There were 5 others, men and women I hadn't witnessed before, clean-cut, focused, the type of people who didn't blink unless told to. "We're initiating Phase Omega," the commander said. "Containment isn't enough. Influence isn't enough." "What's the mission?" I asked. He turned the holographic map toward me. Red flares blinked across it. Settlements with increased Horaxis sympathies. Trade routes now considered unstable. Stations with increased pirate activity, political dissent, or sudden technological independence. "These systems aren't rejecting us because they hate us," he said. "They're rejecting us because for the first time, they believe it's possible." "And it is," one of the others muttered. Everyone turned toward him. He didn't flinch. "We didn't kill Horaxis," he said. "We buried their systems, their satellites, their cities. But we didn't erase them. They're still alive somewhere, broadcasting through ghost channels, feeding information to the outer settlements. And humanity doesn't tolerate infection," I said. The commander nodded. "You're going back into council space, quiet, no credentials, no backup. Find the leak, find the voice, and silence it." I looked at the map again. So many red dots, too many. "It won't be one voice," I said quietly. "It's an echo now." "Then kill the echo." My infiltration began on Lunar 9, a mining settlement orbiting a gas giant in the outskirts of the old Vizari Empire. Horaxis sympathies were rumored, but no direct connection had been confirmed until I arrived. It wasn't banners or riots. That's not how rebellion works when you're living under humanity's shadow. It was eyes. The way people looked at me when I said I was from the Reconstruction Coalition, polite still but cold. Then I witnessed it scratched into the underside of a fuel pipe in the service dock. "We remember Titan." That was the first time in years I felt something break inside me. The Titan massacre. 2,000 civilians destroyed by council vessels under Drankari command. Humanity's children. Humanity's medics. They'd died silently. And humanity had waited, built, burned the galaxy down for it. But someone else, someone forgotten, had carried that name too. Titan hadn't been erased. It had been remembered. Not by humanity, but by Horaxis. The rebel cell on Lunar 9 was small. Careful. They didn't organize openly. Didn't march or protest. They printed books, actual books, pages, ink, untraceable. One of them made its way into my hands from a cargo runner who believed I was one of them. Just a slim volume, no author. Title: When Humanity Blinked. I read it in one sitting. It didn't accuse humanity. Didn't scream. It just asked questions. What does harmony look like when it's held at gunpoint? If a civilization must trade its voice for survival, has it truly survived? Can you love your savior and still fear them? The final page held one sentence. Humanity's silence was the loudest sound we ever heard. I stared at that line for hours. Then I burned the book, not because I wanted to, but because I understood its power. Words were becoming weapons, and humanity was bleeding from 1,000 paper cuts. Command wanted identities, locations, maps of resistance movements. They sent me deeper. Krell Station, Drath Prime, Sundive Belt. Everywhere I went, the same message echoed. We are not enemies, but we are not yours. And with every echo, humanity's grip loosened. Not all at once. Not in flames, but in quiet withdrawals. In sectors that didn't respond fast enough. In council advisors who went dark. In ARC operatives who suddenly vanished. It wasn't collapse. It was erosion. And nobody was stopping it. Not even me. Because something had started to change in me. I used to believe in humanity's dominance, in the logic behind our vengeance, our silence, our cold control. But now I'd witnessed what humanity had overlooked. The fire humanity feared was never rebellion. It was memory. We'd erased the Horaxis' worlds, but not the truth. Eventually I found them. Or perhaps they found me. It was on Vassar's grave, a rogue asteroid settlement outside legal space. I followed a signal, ghost-coded, bouncing off a dozen abandoned relays. I expected a hideout. What I found was a sanctuary. No weapons, no guards, just people. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, engineers, teachers, refugees, some ex-council, some ex-coalition. One of them was Horaxis. Old, scarred, one arm gone, face weathered. He looked at me the moment I entered and said, "You're here to kill the story." I didn't answer. He poured me a drink, sat beside me. "You were there, weren't you, at the council tower when humanity pulled the plug?" I nodded. "And you still believe this path leads to harmony?" I didn't know anymore. He leaned back, closed his eyes. Do you know what Haraxis feared the most? What? That one day we'd win. That stopped me cold. Win what? This conflict of silence, the control, the power. That we'd become like humanity, that we'd forget why we resisted. And did you? He opened his eyes. No, humanity did. That night I sent a message to Nexus, just 5 words. We may have gone too far. No reply came. None ever would, because humanity doesn't apologize. Humanity doesn't ask. Humanity decides. But for the first time, humanity wasn't the only one deciding. The whispers had grown too loud. Too many people had started remembering. And once a memory awakens, you can't kill it. The message reached ARC Command at 0400 hours. Not a coded transmission, not a tactical ping, just a public broadcast. Wide spectrum blasted across every known system, pirate, civilian, military, from Sol to the dark edges of the dead Council Rim. It was her voice again. Thytel, the ghost of Haraxis. We are not soldiers. We are not rulers. We are not conquerors. We are the memory you tried to bury, and we are still here. There was no threat in the message, no demand, no rally cry, just those last 4 words. Still here, still present. And for the first time since the arcs activated, humanity couldn't silence it because the message wasn't coming from a world or a station. It was coming from the relay graves. The ancient pre-council communications lattice buried in abandoned systems forgotten for centuries. They were unmonitored, untraceable, and suddenly everyone was listening. Within 24 hours, over 80 fringe systems joined the call. Some openly, some just by repeating the message. We are still here. It echoed across trade routes, slipped into navigation software, appeared on cargo scans, haunted secure channels, and humanity hesitated. Not because we were afraid of conflict, but because this wasn't conflict. This was remembrance, and we'd built no weapon to fight that. I was ordered back to Nexus 1, not summoned, ordered. That hadn't happened since Titan. The commander met me in the Hall of Thought, where long-term policy was drafted, where ARC architects designed the future of control. Only he wasn't alone. There were others, people I didn't recognize. Younger, colder, new-blood strategists, grown in the silence, raised in the shadow of victory. They'd never lived in the age when humanity was humble. Never learned the value of restraint. The commander didn't greet me, just spoke. They've hijacked the narrative. I didn't answer. There's sentiment now across at least 63 settlements. People saying humanity's occupation is unnecessary. Oppressive. It is, I said. That got their attention. A few stiffened. One glared. The commander only watched me. What do you recommend? He asked, voice flat. Pull back, I said. Allow the message to burn itself out. Don't fuel it. Don't fight it. Time is our best weapon. A pause. Then one of the younger strategists stepped forward. And if it doesn't die? I looked her dead in the eye. Then perhaps it's time we ask why it's alive at all. The chamber fell quiet, because I'd said what none of them wanted to face. The truth was we hadn't created harmony. We'd created obedience, and obedience has an expiration date, especially when built on silence. Humanity didn't respond publicly. That wasn't our way, but quietly we doubled down. New restrictions hit fringe systems, code-based sanctions, licensing penalties, artificial intelligence recalibrations that coincidentally disrupted commerce. It wasn't overt, but it was felt. Humanity was tightening the leash again, and the leash bit back. 3 days afterward, Feltrix Port Authority, once a loyal trade ally, declared neutrality. They severed all reconstruction contracts, kicked out human-appointed advisors. They didn't ask for conflict. They just said they wanted to breathe again. That same day, a Council-era settlement, Juno's Gate, replaced their human-licensed artificial intelligence with a Haraxis-built open network. Less efficient, less stable, but free. The effect was immediate. Others followed. Whispers became statements. We're not anti-humanity. We're just not yours. We'll take our chances with chaos over controlled harmony. We've had enough of silence. It was happening. Not all at once, not explosively, but like cracks in a glacier. And behind each crack, a flood waited. Back at Nexus, the tension grew. One strategist proposed a surgical campaign. Wipe out known resistance hubs, then blame it on pirate factions. Noise, they called it. Whiteout warfare. Another suggested digital isolation. Shut down the entire relay system for a week. Blame solar interference. Sweep the communications clean. The commander said nothing, just stared at the information feeds, watching the defiance grow. Then one evening he summoned me alone. No audience, no cameras, no rank. just two men who had witnessed too much. He poured a drink, real whiskey, not synthetic, offered me a glass. I witnessed what you witnessed, he said. I said nothing. We built a new order, he went on. And for a while it worked, but it wasn't harmony, was it? I drank. No, I said it was terror. He nodded slowly, and we told ourselves that was enough. It never is. He exhaled hard. I want out. That stopped me, your command? Not anymore. I gave them my resignation yesterday. They won't accept it. I didn't ask. He finished his drink, then looked me in the eye. I believe we made a mistake. I nodded once, and for the first time since the council fell, I witnessed doubt in humanity's most unshakable man. The following morning he was dead, airlock breach logged as a systems malfunction. But we both knew better. Someone had accepted his resignation after all. That was the turning point for me. Not Thetal's broadcast, not the message, not even the whisper of rebellion. It was that silent purge, that reminder that humanity, my humanity, was now a machine that consumes its own. So I disappeared, cut my tag, fried my neural trace, burned my vessel. I became what humanity feared most, a ghost with memory. They came after me, of course. Black Flag retrieval teams, whisper agents. But humanity trained me better than anyone. And now I use their own systems against them. I moved from station to station, world to moon. Each place I left one thing behind. A story. Not a lecture, not a rant, just truth about Titan, about the arcs, about the cost of silence, and about the one thing humanity never wanted spoken again. The day the council realized humanity had been playing nice, it caught on, because stories are seeds, and I planted thousands. 1 year afterward, I watched from the outer rings of the Cryon Swarm as the coalition voted to dissolve humanity's central oversight. Not because they hated humanity, but because they were tired of being afraid. They weren't defiant, just done. And in that moment, humanity was finally faced with the one truth we'd ignored for 100 years. You can't rule memory. You can silence voices. You can erase identities. But you can't kill the moment people start asking questions. The arcs are still out there. Hundreds of them, watching, waiting, planning, and perhaps one day they'll rise again. Attempt to rebuild the Shadow Empire. Perhaps they'll learn. Or perhaps they won't, but as for me, I keep moving. Because I know humanity better than anyone. I know its pride, its power, its darkness. But I also remember the part it buried. The human part. The messy, beautiful, defiant soul of humanity that once looked up at the stars. Not to conquer, but to belong. Perhaps we'll find that again. Perhaps not. But I'll keep telling the story. Because the day humanity stopped playing nice was the day the galaxy learned that silence is not harmony. And harmony, real harmony, can only exist when nobody is afraid to speak.